Hey guys, how you going? Hope you're all doing very well. This evening I'm going to be doing another movie review, so hopefully you find this one interesting. This movie is a horror film from Argentina, Spanish language English subs, released in the year 2018, directed by Gonzalo Calzada, and this film is called Luciferina. So Luciferina is about this nun who returns home because she wants to say goodbye to her dying father, but when she gets there she realises that her family is in tatters. Her sister is very angry at her because she believes she abandoned them because things were getting tough. So the nun since learns that the sister is a drug addict who has a very abusive partner, so she's trying to get the sister onto the straight and narrow, but she's finding that very difficult. And the more she learns about her father, the more she realises that things are not what they seem, and actually there is an evil presence that's around that threatens to destroy them all. So along the way she realizes that she's going to learn something about herself that she didn't know, and that thing that she learns is actually going to be a key tool in actually fighting off this evil. And so whether or not she can is something you're going to have to find out for yourself, because that's as far as I'm going with my synopsis. Now my thoughts on Luciferina. You guys know that Argentina is a very, very special place for me. My wife's Argentinian, so that means that half my family is Argentinian. I lived there for 2 years and I love everything about the culture and I love everything about the people. One of the best places on earth, in my opinion, is that yes, it does have problems, but as far as people and culture, you will not find anything better. So I love Argentine cinema, obviously. So every time I watch an Argentine film, I have my fingers crossed that it's going to be an absolute knockout. Now, when it comes to the Argentine film industry, there is a big gap between the good films and the bad films, but that makes it very exciting. That makes it like a lucky dip. Am I going to actually see an absolute gem, or am I going to see a film that just should be forgotten? And so yes, that can be a bad thing if you think about it, but on the other hand, if you think about it, it can be a good thing, is because it creates a lot of excitement. And when Argentina deliver good films, they are very, very good, and that's why I believe that this industry is very, very underrated. Is that in Australia especially, you don't hear anything about Argentine film, so it's definitely every movie, well, the majority of films that I watch are actually blind experiences, but I always have those fingers crossed, as I said. And so if I have a big problem with the industry, is that the gap between good and bad is very big. And so is Luciferina going to be a film that I absolutely love, or it's a movie that I'm going to wish I didn't see? So Gonzalo Calzada directed another film called Resurrection, which is a movie I really liked. I actually watched it in cinemas in Argentina, and I thought that was very impressive. It had issues, but I thought, okay, well, that's definitely a reason to go and watch Luciferina. So with not really knowing exactly what to expect, I had a little bit of excitement that maybe this is going to be another movie of his that I'm going to like. When it comes to Argentine directors, you've got Gonzalo Calzada, you've got Daniel de la Vega and Adrian Garcia Bogliano. Now those two directors that I just mentioned have actually gone on to bigger and better things, but Gonzalo Calzada, he's definitely flying under the radar at the moment. So as I said, putting that all together, I thought, all right, well, hopefully Luciferina is going to be that movie that I'd be very excited about. But after watching it, I will say it's not a film I was overly excited about, but there were moments in this movie that demonstrate how good this director is. And what Gonzalo Calzada does the best in this film is that he manages to create an absolutely fantastic mood. The movie is very atmospheric, it's very gothic, it feels like a good versus evil type of movie, is that it's a very uncomfortable experience. The cinematography is very, very crisp. A lot of these Argentine horror films, they have a lower budget feel, but this movie, for being an unknown film to me, actually had a very high-end production and very capable production. The overall camera usages were very, very good. I thought the setting was fantastic. It was actually, part of this was filmed in Tigre, which is a beautiful part of Argentina. I thought they utilised that beauty in a way where it felt like a fairy tale almost. And so when this nun is going through and investigating what's happening to her family, that fairy tale, it's a dark fairy tale because there's a level of beauty, but there's a level of ugliness. And so the beauty symbolised good, and the ugliness obviously symbolised the evil that was lurking around in this nun's life. Is that the good good versus evil battle was forever present, whether it was the inner demons of these characters or the literal demons in this movie that were fighting against this nun. I always thought that the good versus evil sort of battle was ever present, and that was something I liked, is that the movie never forgot what it wanted to be, so the tone felt very, very consistent. I thought the acting was very good. For actors and actresses that I'm not really familiar with in the Argentine film industry, I thought they were very, very competent. They actually felt like people rather than actors and actresses just reading off a script. And that's ultimately why the gap between good and bad in Argentina as far as films are concerned is so wide, because it seems as though all the good actresses and actors are used for the good films, but when you get really bad movies, the acting is just completely different. But this movie had very competent acting, it had very competent directing, and it had some very, very memorable scenes. There was one scene, especially at the end, where it was just one of the most unique sex scenes you will ever see. It was quite a high-impact sex scene, but it was literally good versus evil in that particular sex scene. So it's definitely unique. It's definitely something I don't want to give away completely. So go and check that particular sex scene out. And I basically challenge anyone to actually find a sex scene that is similar to this one. And so that really shocked me in a very good way. I thought, okay, well, I wasn't really expecting that. And there are some very grisly moments. There's some violence. There's a very, very uncomfortable birthing scene that I thought, okay, well, that was a welcome inclusion into what makes it a hardened kind of horror movie. And so it does have an elevation as far as shocking, sort of provocative material, and that was something that I always appreciate whenever I come across a horror movie. But unfortunately, the reason why I didn't think as though it was brilliant is because the movie does have a very generic storyline, is that it's good versus evil, it's possession, it's demons, and it's stuff that you've seen before, and so therefore there does come a level of predictability, and that level of predictability allows you to see what's behind the corner. So the surprise in this movie doesn't really surprise you as much, because I always felt like I was playing fortune teller, and that is down to the generic qualities. But having said that, the generic qualities are handled very well, but it does lessen the fear factor to some degree because, as I said, if you know what's around the corner, if you know what's hiding under your bed, then ultimately you're not quite as surprised. And if you're not surprised, therefore there's an element of fear that is taken away to some degree. And it's also a little bit too long. It's 115 minutes, and I thought, all right, well, because it's predictable, there are moments where it's kind of just stretching it out a little bit, and therefore, because you know how it's going to get, how the conclusion's going to be, the overall anticipation coming up to that particular moment of conclusion is kind of wasted. And I thought, all right, well, I know what point you're trying to make, but can you make it already? I want to get on to the next scene. And so I thought some tighter editing would have made the continuity a little bit more fluent. Although the tone is very consistent and very dreaded and evil, I thought there were moments in the editing that weren't quite as consistent, and it was kind of like dragging itself out to make that runtime. It almost felt like at the start of the movie the studio said you have to make it at 115 minutes, it can't be any shorter, but the material wasn't long enough for that, so he was just trying to widen it out as much as possible, just kind of elongate it to a point where I felt as though, all right, well, you're taking too long to make that particular point. And so that was another issue, is I thought the runtime was a little bit too long for its own good. It is very generic in what it does, but there are some very memorable scenes. As I said, the sex scene is definitely worth watching, and there are some moments that I thought were very grisly, and the makeup effects were very good as well. I thought the demons looked great. So there are moments that are very good, but unfortunately there are moments that are noticeable, and although they don't derail the experience totally, it definitely does drag it down to some degree, which makes Luciferina a movie that is not a waste of time, but I wouldn't go out of your way to track it down. If you can come across it by accident, I definitely think that there are worse ways to spend nearly 2 hours, but it's definitely not one of the best Argentine horror films going around. So overall for Luciferina, still go out, still see it if you get the chance, but don't get your hopes up for an absolute masterpiece. I only give this film 2.5 stars. Alright guys, that's it for my review. Hope you enjoyed it. Till next time, keep watching movies, and I'll see you later.